What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Here with the Growth House Podcast. I'm your host, Jesse Ray. My man, Ramon Casaus. What a good-looking dude. Welcome to the podcast, my man.
What's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I want to switch it up and ask something kind of fun to start the podcast off. What's something most people don't know about you?
Most people don't know, so more than 50%. I've done 20 registered solo skydives.
When did you start doing that?
I did that about almost 2 years ago, actually. It was for my birthday. I took 10 days off, and I was at Skydive Arizona every single morning for 10 days in a row. And me and my business partner and I were we're like, hey, let's do it. Let's learn how to jump out of planes. And so we did.
That's wild. I feel like if you guys were business partners, you probably should have been like, all right, one person stay on the ground just in case something happens. But you said, hey, the business goes, it's both of us.
I'm based on Alex and our dynamic, I'm convinced the only reason he went was to make sure I didn't die. That's he went just to make sure I was like, good. I'm convinced. There's a funny photo actually of us, and I'm like looking the other way, and he's like checking something on my parachute. Like it's just a good like visual on. He's double checking to make sure like some of the certain features are active and live on the parachute. So it was funny.
Hey, that's a good partner right there, man. I love that.
Yeah, it was fun. It was good times.
Well, let's do this. Let's start with paint the picture. What does that life look like right now for Ramon, for your company, for your business? And then we'll take a step back.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I moved out to Scottsdale, Arizona about almost, was it 2 years now? Yeah, 2 years went by quick. I wish I would have done it a lot sooner. So I am adapting in a good way to the new climate out here. It's very hot, but also meeting a ton of awesome people in the business community. That's what I came for, really. I started my business, independent real estate brokerage in Albuquerque, New Mexico, when I was like 24. Since then, we expanded into Denver, into Scottsdale, and still have our location in Albuquerque. And so I've been every single day studying real estate for the last 7 years. Decided I need kind of a change of scenery, but also to get into a more competitive market, more competitive environment. And I'd always been drawn to Scottsdale. I think I probably used to come party for Waste Management when I was in college. But then as I got into the professional world, I would always meet people that were from Arizona, Scottsdale, a lot of real estate influence. And so I was always here coming back and forth, learning what was happening here and taking it back to Albuquerque. And then at some point you just kind of ask yourself, why am I going back? Why don't I just stay? And so that was 2 years ago.
And then our connection is based off of one of our friends, AJ Sillins, who is from New Mexico. And that's how we got connected, which is awesome.
AJ will vouch for this, that all the people from New Mexico, we know each other. It's this underground community of people, and we're all connected in one way or another. And, we take care of our own when they're out here in Arizona. So yeah, that's AJ and I went to college together, and yeah, he moved out here first, and yeah, he's a great guy.
I love that. All right, take us back. Because AJ started, entrepreneurship, I think when he was 3 years old. But you have a similar story. You started super young as well.
Yeah.
So when did you get the entrepreneur bug?
Yeah, not 12 years old. That is the most insane story I've heard. My dad's actually a custom home builder. So I was also very used to like, it's a good month, it's a bad month, it's a tough year, it's a good year. Like I was very much in that. And I also didn't know that there was anything like weekends, Saturdays, early, late nights, like, my mom was involved in the business for a while. Like you just it's just normal. But I got out of high school and I knew I wanted to get into college. And when I was in college, I knew real estate. I said, I want to be in real estate. I didn't know what that meant. And so I thought like commercial real estate. I was kind of bouncing back and forth through things. And so I got actually an opportunity to work for an internship at first, a publicly traded real estate investment trust called Camden Property Trust. Amazing company. They're owner operator of about a portfolio of maybe like, I think today around 17 to $20 billion of apartments across the US, around 70,000 units. Phenomenal company. And I actually went and took an internship in Tampa, Florida in my last year of college. And I thought I was going to go the corporate real estate route. I was going to be in the real estate investment department of that company, basically analyzing deals, right? That's what you were going to start off doing. And when I was in Tampa, I was like, this is cool, but man, I'm kind of bored. I would be like asleep at lunch. Like, you know what I mean? Like tired. Like I'm just bored. And I love the company, but I just realized at that point, the 9 to 5 just wasn't for me. The other side to that was I actually started asking guys that I made friends with. I started asking, like after hours, of course, like, what can I expect to make? AKA, what do you make? Right? Like, I kind of want to know what the income trajectory is here. And it just wasn't, for guys who were 10 years older than me, I was like, I'm not waiting around to make 120 grand. Like that's, I'm just not going to do that. And so that's when I decided that I wasn't going to go that route. Moved back to Albuquerque. Well, not moved back, but just went back. Didn't pursue the full-time position. And my dad convinced me to get a real estate license. At first, very apprehensive to the idea, was not sold on that at all. Was like, dude, like really, like I know like some of the agents that you've used for your properties, and I don't know. And he said something interesting, and he said, I just paid it. Now remember, this is 2014, so after this is pre-inflation. He said, I just paid an agent $25,000 just last week, and I was like, wait, what, you 25,000 what? And he's like, yeah, 25 grand. For what? He's like, well, he brought us a buyer who is going to build a house for $1 million, and we gave him 2.5%. It's very standard. And I was like, he's like, so it's not going to happen, your first day on the job, but yeah, if you're in the game, 25 grand is just change, man. I was like, oh, interesting. I probably had $250. So you got to imagine like $25,000. I couldn't even imagine making that in one check. And so that's what really launched my real estate idea was, hey, all right, I'm going to go do this. If I could do that 10 times in a year, that was the thought process. Now, You asked me a question that I probably should have answered with this because I just thought about it. Something that a lot of people don't know. In order to get enough money, because I had probably $50 to $100 at the time in my bank account total. That was my net worth at the time. And I actually got hired with a traveling explosive demolition company because I was like, I have to come up with $4,000 to get my license. So I'm not going to sell drugs and I'm not going to rob a bank. So how else am I going to get $3,000 in a short period of time? Right. And so I found this traveling explosives team, and we travel all around the Southwest, and long story short, blow up mine quarries. So I learned a lot about dynamite, ammonium nitrate. I learned about a lot of different explosives. It was cool. But you got paid hazard pay, time and a half, overtime. When we're traveling, you're getting paid. So like I was able to make a substantial amount of money. And it's the hardest work I've ever done in my life. Insane work. But it made me very thankful for what was on the other side of all that, because that was brutal. I can't believe people do that every day. And so, I got enough money, got my real estate license when I was 23, and pretty much went from there.
And then at 24, you kind of missed the part where you're like the youngest person to ever open a brokerage, right?
So well, I got my license, which just is insane that this is even, it's not allowed anymore, by the way. It should not have been allowed, but it's not allowed anymore. It should have never been allowed. But the law was changing, where you had to be only licensed 2 out of the last 5 years in the business, and there was no production sales requirement. It was just literally 2 years of an active license out of the last 5, and you could open a brokerage. So I had got my real estate license. I started getting it while I was in college because I figured out you could get credit for getting your real estate license that counted towards graduating. So I did that. And then, so my 2 years was coming up, and I was like, man, it's October. The law changes in December. It's now or never. So I went and took the courses and everything. And the day of my 2 years, I was walking into my new office with my brokerage, which was, it's called Rock Real Estate Partners, ROC. And so, I was 24 when that happened. And from my understanding, I've never yet to be shown any data that suggests otherwise, that I've been the youngest qualifying, that's what they call it, youngest managing owner broker in the state. And then grew that grew that company to about 60 agents locally in Albuquerque.
So I want to stop there. It's actually one thing I want to go back to, which I think is really important, especially if people are still in that corporate job. And you looked at someone that was ahead of you and you asked your peers and people ahead of you, like, hey, how much are you guys like making? You obviously ask, on the low, but it's so important to ask those people 1 to 2, 3 steps ahead of you, because that's where you're going to be if you stay at that company. And if they're not living the lifestyle you want, what's the point of staying at that company? So I think it was really interesting that that's what you did. You said, all right, 120,000, that's the max. So I got to be here for X amount of years. I'm out. I got to figure something else out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you said something that you were able to grow your company to 60 agents in a pretty short period of time. And you're 24 years old. How were you able just to turn on this like leadership and recruiting like machine so quickly? Like what were you doing to be able to recruit so many people and they saw and believed in you?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I actually had posted something about this the other day, that it was like can't remember the exact words, but I was talking about how your biggest obstacles become your biggest advantages in the future. And so for me, because I was 24 years old, I look a lot older now, but I was a young kid. Like I'm recruiting a grown man or woman, right, who's 40 years old with kids and, and really has stakeholders and has really taken their career wherever they're going to go seriously. I had to craft a value proposition, craft a culture, and craft an image that is safe, reputable, professional, and then actually deliver on that, right? And so I got really good at recruiting because I use the word watertight. My pitch had to be watertight when I'm meeting with somebody. Every last detail of their experience coming into my world had to scream, this is a better opportunity than going with your larger, more reputable brands, right? Like I had to create an experience that matched that. And so, long story short, just reps. I've probably to this day interviewed one-on-one, probably 500 to 1,000 agents, somewhere in that ballpark. Hour-long conversations. That's a lot of hours of talking to real estate agents. So yeah, that was the recruiting piece. I'd go out, I'd find other people who were amazing recruiters. I'd learn from them. I'd steal their stuff. I'd recreate it into mine. Rip off and duplicate. And then the leadership side, I tell the story because it's important, is that I remember, for like at least 6 months to a year, I actually hired, I didn't actually pay them because it was a startup. There was like, hey, if you'll be our first consulting client and like give us feedback, and then if we do a good job, if you'll tell other people that call you that we did a good job for you, we'll do this for free. And I was like, all right, cool, let's do it. And it was all about interpersonal communication, leadership, and like organizational, I don't know what you want to call it, organizational structure, systems, those types of things. And I learned so much from those guys. And I remember to this day, like being with, I think I have like a little piece of paper here. I remember being like with a piece of paper, like in my conference room with nobody there except those guys, literally practicing like my meeting that I was going to have the next day. And because they're like, hey, Ramon, you're kind of an intimidating guy. Like when you squint, you hear something and you squint your eyes when you don't like it. And honestly, we're not scared of you, but like the average person doesn't know you. It's honestly a terrifying look. So like little stuff like that, they would point out like how to talk with your hands, your body language, like giving compliments. I know that sounds really stupid, but I was just never someone who like stopped and acknowledged how good of a job I never would do that. And so they taught me all these soft skills. And we it was Friday night. We're in the office at 9 p.m. and I'm out, with a piece of paper, nobody in the desks or the chairs, and I'm there practicing. Like, okay, hello everybody, like the whole thing. And so I think it just comes down to reps. Like, that was practice, and then of course, 7 years of running a sales meeting every single week, you get pretty creative and you get pretty good at it.
100%. I love that. Talking about just doing the reps. Because at the end of the day, people try to skip that step. Like you actually do have to put the reps in. No one just naturally can speak that well or just perform in meetings like that. So that's so good. I guess where I want to take it from here is let's dive into something a little bit more tactical. So you mentioned to me before the podcast, you said you have a way to kind of make any deal happen. And walk me through what that means. We're talking about seller finance.
Yep.
Kind of dive into that, and we'll kind of riff on that for a while.
Sure. So the seller finance concept is not something new. I didn't create it. It's not something that I have, nobody else does. It's a very commonly used acquisition strategy and disposition, but we're just going to talk acquisition. When I first got started in real estate, I made a little bit of money, like the first couple of years, not a lot, but then had a substantial amount of money to invest. And I started investing. But the problem I ran into is when you're self-employed, they want to know what your shoe size is and who your third grade teacher was. And so I didn't like that. And plus, I didn't want to pay any taxes. So, of course, my income, right, was showing very little. So I was like, well, I have all this cash sitting. And I'm not going to get qualified for a loan if I should. I paid myself 50 grand last year. So what do I do? And that's when somebody introduced me to seller financing. And the reason why I believe seller financing is the most elite acquisition strategy on the planet for people who are buying, especially rental properties, is because I can take any deal. You can give me any price, any terms. There could be debt on the deal. There could be no debt on the deal. It could be in good condition, bad condition. It doesn't matter. The seller could have high equity or low equity. It does not matter. With seller financing, because all of the terms are negotiable of the whole deal, I can craft it to make sense one way or another. And so when I talk about the different components of the deal, I'm just going to talk about the big three. There's obviously more, but they're a little bit more advanced. But the three are payment, okay? So the actual like interest rate, okay? Interest rate and payment, those are adjustable. Your down payment, right? And then your purchase price. So interest rate, purchase price, and down payment. Those are the big three. So what I always tell people is that a good seller financing deal, one of those components is a layup. Like the price is either so good, I'll put more money down if the price is so good, right? Why would I not? Or what if the price is just retail, but you can get into the deal for 10 grand? Like, you're buying a $500,000. We've done it, $500,000 house, right? For 10 grand. Like that's unheard of. So one of those components has to really make sense. The rock star deals are the ones that two or all three make sense, right? Like two of the three make sense. So that's a real high level on seller financing. But yeah, like you said, any deal, I can make sense of it, especially if I'm looking at a long-term hold, which is our primary focus. We don't buy to flip. We buy to hold. And so that's just our strategy. And I think seller financing is the best.
So how do people find seller finance deals? Because I know people talk about, man, it's so hard to find seller finance. No one wants to do seller finance. How'd you get into that?
Yeah. So seller finance, I think once you learn a little bit more about how to present it, you can obviously make it more attractive. But number one, in the great state of Arizona and New Mexico, now there's others out there, but those are the two I'm extremely familiar with. There is an actual box in the multiple listing service, MLS, that the agent will check that notifies when it's listed that they will consider owner financing. It's called seller may carry in Arizona, and it's called owner financing in New Mexico. So just with properties that are on the market, you will tell your agent, or you can look yourself on Zillow, and you can see deals that the seller, it's on the market for sale, has actively said, I will entertain seller financing deals. Now, just because it's on the market doesn't mean you're going to be able to get favorable terms, but many homes do not sell. So the longer the home sits on the market, right, the more motivation there becomes, and even better, when it expires, just call the owner directly. So those are the layup, in your face, day one deals, right? That's one way to find them.
All right. Break it down a little bit more. Let's get some negotiation tips. So you said you're looking for at least one of them to be a layup, right?
Yep.
Out of the big three. You're looking hopefully for two. Can we even run through like a little mock scenario and how you would go about it?
Yep. So the easiest way then the reason why you can acquire, in my opinion, great deals. And when I say great deals, I mean, we've done deals at 0.5% interest. Like the last one we just did was 3%. Everyone else is over here, residential, you're paying 6.5, commercial, you're paying 8 upwards. We're doing them at 3 and even sometimes less. But it just depends on the deal, right? So a mock deal of how you can acquire when you're in the conversations. Number one, we call it an anchor. You want to anchor on the price. Okay, the price is the most important thing to people. So what happens is that remember, if all the variables are equal and I raise the price, then I got to give a little bit somewhere else, right? So if I give them more money, well, I'm going to need a lower interest rate. If I give you more money, well, what can we do about my down payment? And the best thing to do is be transparent. I'm an investor. I'm not trying to con you in anything. Like I'm probably going to rent this property out. I have to make the cash flow make sense. Now, the tactical, how to present, this is a key to presentation of a seller financing deal is look at the amortization schedule. Okay. And what I mean by that is, Jesse, if I buy your property today for $300,000 at 3% interest and a 5-year call, you need to show them how much additional money they're going to make in that 5 years, the interest payments. Because remember, you're the bank now. But wouldn't you want to know, well, if I'm the bank, what's my total interest I'm getting paid? You got to show them that. Hey, yeah, 300 isn't the amount you wanted. I understand that. But when we look at the interest, you're getting 40,000 of interest. At the end of the day, at 5 years, you're getting 340 for this deal, right? And so showing them the actual interest. Now, the other one, that's the big picture amortization interest, right? So whatever your call date is, show them the total amount up until that point. But the other one is don't present percentage, present payment. And what I mean by that is what a lot of people don't understand is when you break down an amortization table at a 50-50, okay, 50-50 principal interest, that's like a 3.5% interest rate. Like, so the point I'm making is that even at 3.5%, I don't want to pay 3.5%, but I will if the deal's right. I'm going to show them the actual principal and interest that combined into the payment. I'm going to show them how much each month is actually interest. So I'm showing them the big number and I'm showing them the little number every month. And I'm like, hey, I understand what you're saying, but I'm making a $2,000 a month payment. 1,000 of that is pure interest. So now what does that translate to interest rate? Well, that's just going to depend, right? So we don't get fixated on the rate because someone sees you make an offer for 2% and they're like, yeah, screw off. But did you show them the actual payment, how much interest they're going to get every month? And did you show them what your total deal was, interest plus purchase price, what they would actually get at the end of the deal? So those are two areas that is very tactical to present because they're the most important parts if you're the seller. How much interest am I getting every month? If I'm going to play the bank, what am I getting for it? And what's my total net out going to be when this is all said and done?
This is gold. Love it, dropping bombs right now, man.
Yeah.
What's the interest rate that you look at right now? What would you not go above?
Steve, that's the thing. There is no, I mean, obviously there's a limit, right? But like, if I could get into a deal with 0% down, I'll pay you market and I can get a little bit below retail price. Sure. If a property is, $400,000 and I can get it at 350 with 0% down, you want 7%? Done. Consider it done. But what the most important part you have to look at is you have to look at the actual cash flow of the deal. Because for me, I'm going to rent this property out, right? So I'll explain that concept because someone's like, yeah, but what if your payment's too high? What if your payment's $3,000 a month and your rent is $2,500? That means you're coming out of pocket $500 every month. I'll explain. But first you have to look at what is it going to rent for realistically, conservatively. You just have to structure the deal so your payment's less than that. And that's what I mean by like, okay, well, how do I get it lower? Well, I can lower the purchase price, I can lower the interest rate, or I can increase my down payment. Those are the three ways. Well, there's some others, but those are the primary three. But when you look at a deal like that, you're like, well, what if you're coming out of pocket, $500 a month? Let's say, well, if I come out of pocket for 2 years straight, that's $12,000. I put no money into the deal, right? I didn't put any down payment. I said that I had zero down payment. Even if I put 10 grand, I'm only $22,000 in to the deal. And so I'm willing to wait 2 years, and my gamble would be that interest rates are going to come down. At that time, I will refinance that deal to get that lower payment. Now, I could be wrong about that, right? That's a gamble. But me, that's why I would do that. I'd consider doing it because I do believe interest rates are going to go down. And at that time, when they're more advantageous, I'll refinance it, and then I will get a lower payment, and then it will cash flow.
I love the way you think about this because I'm, in the world of, hey, once it gets to this interest rate, whatever, I get stuck. I'm like, oh, can't do the deal. But you're like, nah, just get creative. Play with the three different, numbers and interest rate. I love that. So for people who are just understanding, because it's a very hot topic right now, sub two, huge community talking about it, creative finance in general. So underneath creative finance umbrella, from my understanding, seller finance, sub two, is there any other ones, or is that pretty much the main two? And then also tell the difference between sub two, excuse me, and seller finance.
That's a good one. There are some there's just wholetailing, novation deals. Like there's these little crafty, but for the most part, acquisition wise, I think I would call that the two big ones creatively. Unless you're like trading real estate, there are exchanges and trades that do happen. But the difference between seller financing and subject to is that subject to, you use the existing payment. Okay. There's debt on the property and you use the existing payment. Seller financing, you create a new payment. That's a difference. So when you're a seller financing deal, right, I can dollar for dollar wrap the current payment, but I'm still creating another payment that sits on top of the underlying note. Now, if there is no debt, then it doesn't matter, right? Whatever the payment is. Subject to, the reason why I think subject to has a lot of great applications, it's a phenomenal acquisition method, but it's a little bit limited. If somebody has too much equity, right? If they have 150 grand of equity, you either got to come up with 150 grand or you can't do the deal. Or if their payment is too high, you have to decide, am I willing to hold on to it and hope that I can refinance it down the road? So I think that they're both great strategies, but I see seller financing being more applicable broadly. Like I can make it happen on a sub two deal. I can make it happen on a guy who's owned his portfolio for 30 years, free and clear. I can make it happen there too. But those are the main two differences. And most of the time, subject to is more of a pain point. There's usually a high degree of motivation. Seller financing, not saying there's not a degree of motivation, but the motivation is a little bit different, and it's more motivated around gain. Because I'm teaching the seller how you can now be the bank. Instead of me paying the bank principal interest payments, why don't I just pay you? Right? So there's a little bit more risk involved for them, but at the end of the day, there's a little bit more motivation around the gain component of the deal. Less pain.
Got it. That makes sense. I want to switch back to the real estate agent for a second,
All right.
because there's a lot of agents that listen to this podcast. And for me, as an investor looking for a deal, and if I'm using an agent, sometimes in my head, I'm thinking, you're a real estate agent, but you don't own any property. Why would I want to work with you? What's your thought process on that? And then also as a real estate agent, when do you think it's time for you? You're making good money now. Let's say you have some deals come in, you have, some money saved up, which we talk about creatively. You don't even need to have potentially any money saved up to get your first house. But is there a time where you tell your agents, hey, you probably should own some of this real estate as well?
I tell them from day one. And the reason I tell them is not for any other reason that your real estate business, for 99.99% agents, only functions with you in it. If you are out of it, it does not make money. And so what that means is that it's not a very sellable asset. There's no enterprise value, right? Now there is, right? It's not like it's worth nothing, but it's not worth an exit. So you have to say, okay, well, what does compound and build equity for me that I could do simultaneously without quitting my day job? It's real estate. That's the exit strategy for agents. There are people who do build companies that are able to sell and whatnot, but 99.99% don't. So I think it's the smartest thing you can do is take those commissions early on and just dump them into real estate. Live like a cockroach, live under your means and save, and keep throwing that money into deals. I can't tell you how many times I've cleared out my bank account to buy the next deal. I'm just be like, early on in the career, it was, man, going from here to zero and then doing it again and again and again and again. And so, yeah, I think it's crucial. And you just become like, I've only learned seller financing, not because I've helped so many people do it. I've learned it because I've done it. And you're never going to pay attention more to a transaction until it's yours.
So true. Talk to me about how your thoughts have changed when you first got into real estate to where it is now. And you can even talk about like maybe you loved a certain asset class in real estate, and then now you're like, I actually like, this better.
I've always liked the creativeness of real estate. I think that, I mean, there's so many ways to be involved in it. It's just like, it's a never ending sea of opportunity. I definitely, like I think I was telling you the other day, like I'm very intrigued and even a part of a couple different tech companies in real estate. I love the prop tech and even some fintech stuff. I find it fascinating. And I think that that's definitely a direction that I'm, moving with my career. But I think I never really liked being called a realtor, to be honest. Like that sounds funny, but like, I always was like, no, I'm more creative than that. Like, I felt like that put me in a box. I used to like it, but now I don't, and I don't mind it, but I'm just saying I don't like that term for myself because I feel like it puts me in this box. And I'm like, I feel like, the whole point of being in the business with that license is that you can be very creative with it. You don't have to just be able to help people buy and sell deals. Other than that, I still think that it's something that I've actually thought when I got started, and I still believe it to this day. That's selling real estate. Now, of course, there's all the other ways to do things, but I didn't start that. I didn't do those. I sold real estate to make money. And so I still believe that selling real estate is one of the best vehicles to obtain financial freedom in a very short amount of time. And if you really go for it, I haven't seen a better opportunity that anybody truly has access to do. The barrier to entry is low, right? Couple grand, a test, and you can go sell a house for $3 million and make 90 G's. Like, tell me where else you're going to find that.
Mic drop on that one. I don't know.
There's
so true.
There's all, and you could do the same thing with wholesaling. You could do the same thing. I mean, it's all there, but my experience was in the sales side. And yeah, I don't think there's a better vehicle for people who are like, hey, I want to get out of my financial situation. I want to have options. I want financial stability, and I need to do it. And then I need to do it in a shorter period of time than like 10 years. I need to do it like in 2 years or 3 years. I think it's a phenomenal vehicle for that.
Totally agree. I mean, I was able to do it once I had the money saved up to get my first house, bought my second house, and I was able to do it literally within 10 months through 2 rentals. Yeah. Did co-living, so obviously the cash flow is a little better, but still, it's 100% true. For you, man, I was just thinking about it. What's for you thinking about shiny object syndrome? Because I think for me and a lot of people who are just starting investing, they're like, oh my gosh, I love co-living, but then also want to look into, commercial real estate and then multifamily. How important is it to actually stay with one, or should you, as all these people say, add tools to your tool belt and understand them all when you're just like looking at it as an investment?
When you're just looking at it as an investment.
So if you're an investor, do you think someone should just start and like hone in on one, or is it okay to bounce around and own multifamily and then also look at commercial?
You're going to get the best deals when you're an expert. in an asset class. Sure, are there exceptions to that? Absolutely. But majority of the time, your deals that are landmark deals for you, like home runs, they're going to be
Mm-hmm.
because you're an expert in that field, in that asset class. I think you should be well versed. I think you should be able to look at a multifamily pro forma and understand what NOI is and how the cap rate affects the sales price, understand, what the expense ratio is and the debt coverage ratio. I think you should know those things, but doesn't mean that you have to focus on it, because prospecting is a whole process in itself, right? It's a whole job in itself. So I would say figure out what you are interested in, or I always say path of least resistance. So if I'm an agent and I've been selling homes, why would I go look at industrial? Now, I'm not saying don't get there, but I'm like, hello, like this is what you already know. Just buy that, because the best investment is the one you don't lose money on, right? Like so I would focus on path of least resistance, bounce around, learn a little bit, but at some point just pick one. And as long as you go all in on it, you're not going to be wrong.
Love that. And you were very intentional when you came out to Arizona. You said, hey, I want to be in Arizona. A lot of movers and shakers out here. Real estate's really big out here. Talk to me about like community, and then also that inner circle. Because I feel like a lot of people I talk to are so successful. They're like, hey, I really protect my time. I'm not hanging out with just, anyone. I'm very intentional about who I'm friends with. And that's something that I've, the last 3 years been really important to me. I don't have time just to quote unquote kick it. Like, unless I'm meeting with someone and I'm doing business, or this is someone that I'm actually learning from and growing. And that's something that's been really important for me. Talk to me about that experience for you, especially starting in real estate so young. And it seems like you were hyper focused. Like, I got to surround myself with the right people.
For sure. It's so funny you said that. I was actually talking to my girlfriend right before, like an hour before this. And I was at the gym today, and I was really thinking about, like, we do an annual like goal, like we set our goals and we review them on a quarterly basis. So we have one coming up. And I was telling her, I said, I kind of had an epiphany while I was at the gym, and I said, I want to install two rules about our social life. Because as you know, when you're in business, it all mixes together. And I said, number one, no more people who are full of shit. If we know someone's full of shit, give them a chance. But when we both are on the same page that we think someone's full of shit, just done. Like, and that means they
Mm,
say things and don't keep their word, and they're just, it's just you know the person I'm talking about, right? Like you can,
100%.
everyone's hearing that and going, yeah, I know somebody just like that. I said, no more, no more. And then the other one is, if we don't admire what they're building or who they are as people, and we don't want, it's not necessarily want what they have, but like we admire that the things that they've done and accomplished, and want to be around those types of people. If they're not that, then no. And not saying you
Mm,
have to cut, you have to be some rigid, you can't, have to delete people's numbers and unfollow them on Instagram. It's just saying that, we don't put time and effort into that area. We put time and effort here. Um, and,
mm-hmm.
and the reason why I told her that is because over the last couple of years, there's just been some adverse situations we all get, at some point that you run into them. Nothing bad, but we just look around and go, look, that situation came from someone who was full of shit. We got involved in it, and now look what we were involved. Or people who don't have something that we admire, or have built something, or we admire them as people, right? We wouldn't trade places with them. We don't want what they have. We got caught up in a situation where it was one of those people. We're like, okay, we know the root problem are those two things, and so let's eliminate them. And I think having that's my quote unquote audit system, but having some type of audit system yourself and recalibrating it every
Mm-hmm.
once in a while, I would say is a healthy exercise when you want to really elevate the relationships that you do have, and the caliber of people.
I love that. So true. There's actually a Harvard study. I don't know if you heard of this one, but the Harvard study said that 99% of your success is dictated by your reference group, which is essentially the people that you're closest with. We've all heard the quote, you're the average of the 5 people that you hang out with the most. But to have that Harvard study back it up is like,
Yeah.
damn, that is powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the cool I did not know about that. I'll have to look into read it.
I posted on my Instagram story today, so you can look at
Oh, okay, yeah,
it.
I'll check it out. But yeah, and I think one of the coolest parts about really like thinking about the network is you can create it however, like it's completely up to you. Like there is no I'm stuck with these, but no, it's 100% however you want to create that group. That's 100% in your control.
So true. I want to switch gears and talk about. Let's do some rapid fire questions as we're kind of nearing the end. Number one, favorite book. I'm actually going to ask you two questions here. Favorite book for someone just starting out in real estate, and the favorite book that you're reading right now. Doesn't have to be real estate related.
Favorite book in real estate. I'll come back to that one. Um, I would say book I'm reading right now is actually Tony Robbins' new book, Holy Grail of Investing. Um, that book it's very macro, high level, right? It's great. Um, it opens your eyes to a lot of things, and they're just phenomenal writers. Like it's just you read certain books and you're like, this is so well put together. You want to read more of it. It's one of those books. So that's been the favorite that I haven't been able to put down for the last 5 days or so. And then,
Is there something in that book? From my understanding, I haven't read it yet, but it was kind of talking about how like people that invest in private equity have like a huge advantage.
the one that was the eye opener was about learning about GP stakes. That was
Oh, what is that?
so the general partners of a fund can actually
Mm,
sell a portion of the actual their equity, right? Their portion, their
mhm,
percentages. They can actually sell part of that ownership of the general partner. And now most of the time they use it for additional liquidity to then go because you're not getting cash out of the fund until 5-10 years. So they use that money to then go put more money into the next fund because it's pretty customary that the GP does self fund the fund along with the investors. That was actually a friend of mine had recommended it to me, who's getting very involved in that world, and he was explaining to me on the phone. I'm like, dude, I don't like. I needed this on a whiteboard. He said, okay, order Tony Robbins' book, Holy Grail of Investing, and then I texted him like 2 days later, and I was like, dude, I get it. I understand GP. I think I understand GP stakes now.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Would you ever do a deal or invest in a deal if the GP didn't have any money in it?
probably not.
Mm,
No, and I've been a part of quite a few funds, and some have gone well, some have not. Some unfortunately got caught up in the interest rate hikes in the multifamily world. Luckily, nothing has gone back to the bank, but you live and you learn. Like right, you look back and you go, what could I have done better? Due diligence, vetted the deal. We just learned a lot, not being in control of some deals. But no, probably not. That's always a good indicator that this is going to go well. At least that somebody has money in the game.
I have the same mindset there. What about, did you think of a book just in real estate when people are getting started that you recommend?
Um, it's hard to say. I mean, honestly, I think Gary Keller writes phenomenal books. Um, the guy has written classic after classic. So I'd say honestly, anything written by Gary Keller, it just gives you a very good frame of reference and like idea of a framework of how to structure a successful real estate business. And the one thing I love that he talks about is leverage. And I feel like leverage in other and I could be wrong about this in other industries and businesses, it's kind of like a no brainer. It's like, yep, you need to hire somebody to take care of your customer service now because you can't keep up with all the tickets. Or, hey, that prospecting is taking you forever. You're drowning out the rest of the business with it. You need to hire somebody to do it. For some reason, real estate, I think it's not as, for some reason, it just never filtered into real estate as well. So I love that they talk about leverage because that is the key to making a business that you can go and leave the country for 30 days and come back and it's still running, which most real estate agents want but don't have. But it's done through leverage.
Hmm.
So yeah, Gary Keller would be any of his books.
What about podcasts, just in general?
Podcasts.
Besides this one, 5 stars for this one.
Yeah, I was like, of course. Besides this one, I actually really like, I've always been an Andy Frisella MFCEO fan. I was listening to that back in 2015. Um, his new stuff, I pick and choose now. Before it was any episode, anytime. Now I'm kind of like, if I want to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, I will. But for the most part, I still love his business and life content.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a podcast I have always loved to turn on and listen to.
All right, as we wrap it up, three last questions. Quote or advice you would give an entrepreneur, real estate agent, etc., who is taking some L's right now and they're looking to get back up on their feet, and it's kind of just to remind them to keep going, because I know I've been at that spot a lot of times in my life as I'm trying to figure out this whole world of entrepreneurship coming from a corporate background. And what's something that you would give to that person?
I would tell them to look up the change curve. Okay,
I've never heard of
the
this.
change curve is the journey somebody goes on when they experience massive change. Now, in this scenario, we're talking about probably massive negative financial change, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunate circumstances, usually financially, and a lot of that time filters mentally, right? So there's a line, okay? The line is optimism and pessimism. Optimism, pessimism. There's a line. Here, when you're starting something new, this is called uninformed optimism. So
Mm-hmm.
this would be if I just got into private equity, it would be so much easier. That's like, yeah, everything looks easier from the outside, right? Everyone's business looks a lot more easy than it really is because you're uninformed and you're optimistic. Then once you actually start doing it, you go into a world of informed pessimism.
Mm-hmm.
You are now going, holy shit, this is a lot harder than I thought. It wasn't as easy. This is going to take way longer, right? That you start going, okay, I was probably wrong about my first assumptions. And then you get into the valley of despair. And this is where the quit happens right here, valley of despair. That's
Mm-hmm.
that. So if you're feeling the way you described, you're in the valley of despair. And everyone has to go through it. There's no shortcut or ticket. Money doesn't it everyone has to go through that valley of despair at some point. And frankly, multiple times, right? When you change and do different things. So you're in the valley of despair. Once you know there, the only other thing that can happen outside of the valley of despair is called informed optimism. The only other thing that can happen is quit. And then we all know what happens there. So the only thing is at that point is informed optimism, where you now know what you got yourself into and you can see there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, I can do it. Something happened. There's confidence. You're like, yeah, I'm sticking to this and I'm going to do it. But in that valley of despair, just got to recognize when you're in there, because it plays games with you. It plays games with your mind. You start thinking about doing other things. It's every day you're thinking about, am I really making the right decision? That's where it is, valley of despair. And so that's the advice I would give someone, is that if you're feeling that, just know exactly where you are. The only thing that can happen, as long as you don't quit, is informed optimism, and that's where all the stuff you want is at.
What do you say to yourself when you're in that valley of despair?
I just think about that meme. You've seen that meme with the diamond miner? You know what I'm
I'm
saying?
about to say the
Yeah, yeah,
dynamite.
that's the
Yep.
one. That's the one. That's the one. The diamond miner. I think of the diamond miner, and then I think of the people in my life who have accomplished great things that I know personally, that I'm proud of and admire what they've done. And like, what would they think about this?
Mm,
Quitting. Like, you start thinking about other people's experiences, and I realize, yeah, that's right. It was all hard for everybody. It's hard for me, boohoo, right? Like,
yeah.
just recognize what it is and keep moving forward. And I think the other thing I hang my hat on always is, if you quit, you already know the answer. You are
That's good.
that other thing. You already know the answer if you quit.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned something I'm going to mention real briefly. You said the people that you know personally. And that's why I love to create, mastermind experiences where they're intimate and you're able to be around those people 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 20 chapters ahead of you, just so you have the realization, like, these guys aren't anything crazy special. Maybe they just been in the game longer. Maybe they just, started earlier. And it's just like me having that belief in myself that I'm able to talk to these people as normal people. And for me, that's just like something that changes my mind when I was, trying to figure things out. And I was like, 100 million sounds crazy, or, whatever financial number, but it's being in those intimate circles with people that's like, all right, if they can do it, I can do it.
I 100% agree with that. And as you get to know those people and you learn their stories, you will learn about the valley of despair for them. They will tell you about that time
Yes.
that they were on their knees praying that it would work out, and no shred of hope that was out there, but just praying it was going to work out. Everyone has to go through it at some point. And so, yeah, I love that. I couldn't agree more.
So true. All right, last two. So people in the Growth House, we're very much a go-giver community. So we want to actually provide you value. No one's going to reach out to you and say, hey, can I pick your brain? We don't do that. So if someone reaches out, which we'll ask, how do we reach out to Ramon? What kind of value, what are you looking for right now? Maybe it's a resource, maybe it's connections, maybe, whatever it could be. What are you looking for right now that someone could provide value to you?
Yeah, well, I think number one is later this year we are launching our actual community all about learning how to leverage the acquisition strategy, seller financing. So if you're interested in that, the more people that can give us feedback and can be active in that type of environment and want to do deals like the deals we were talking about, that would be one way. I don't have anything to sell you today, but we are, starting to get that warm list of people who we know. It's pretty large already, who really want to dive deep in that subject. The other thing is just, I would say anything in the real estate tech space I'm interested in. I like ideas. I like concepts. I love talking about strategies and different business models. So anytime you want to talk about those things, have an opportunity, something along those lines, always happy to talk about it.
Well, shoot, add me to that first list and actually have someone in tech that's building something real estate related that I'll connect you with as well.
Yeah, for sure.
But everyone else do the same thing. How do people connect with you? What's the best channels?
It's probably snail mail. I'll give you my address.
Pigeon, or was it carrier
Yeah,
pigeon?
yeah, the pigeon. Yeah, yeah. You got to write me a letter. No, I'm just kidding. Instagram's probably the easiest way.
And then what's the Instagram? We'll put it in the show notes, but go
Yeah,
ahead and shout it out.
RAMON.CASAUS. First name dot last name.
Ramon, it's an honor, brother. I'm so glad AJ connected us.
Yeah.
Every single, like I told you, it's the first time. We talked for maybe an hour, and I text you afterwards. I was like, dude, I felt like we could talk for another 2-3 hours. Like, you're just someone that is very genuine, authentic, and you have a lot of wisdom. And I appreciate you hopping on this podcast and sharing, so much value with our community.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. And feelings mutual. Yeah, we gotta get together soon again.
Absolutely. Jesse Ray, Growth House Podcast. We're out.